So welcome, everybody. I'm joined today by the gorgeous Heidi Cole. Heidi Cole, from one of her wonderful clients, is known as the CFA Career Whisperer. Do you remember that on your website, Heidi?
I love that. I'm going to adopt that as my new name. It's brilliant.
It's great. Well, Heidi has such an amazing, eclectic career. Started off on the catwalk, became a TV presenter, and got into VIP flying for the very rich and famous, and has, in the last few years, set up an amazing confidence coaching program for cabin flight attendants, for corporate flight attendants. And she's doing amazing things. She's speaking all around the world and changing people's lives. And it's such a delight to have you here, Heidi.
Thanks so much. What an accolade. I'm like, wow, that sounds amazing. I don't think it's quite as glamorous as that, but yeah, I'm still sort of starting out, but it's been an incredible journey already so far. Yeah.
Well, that's the classic humility, which is the thing I picked up from you to begin with. So give us a little bit of a background. Give us a bio of where you started to and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess even when I started modeling and obviously not understanding a great deal about myself, but I think what really excited me about modeling was the fact that, you know, I could literally escape my hometown and start traveling and go to places that I'd only ever seen on a map before in my geography class. And that was so exciting. So that's what started to happen at the age of 17. And I was living out in Japan on and off for quite some time. That was an incredible and quite an unusual experience for me. And then I got to that was a whole journey in itself. And then I'd say when I got to about the age of 26, 27, already back then, because I was modeling, you know, in the 80s, I was, sort of late 80s, early 90s. I was finding that even the kinds of jobs that I was getting then, they were depicting me as some some old kind of, sort of married woman, whatever it was, or some grandma, and they were giving me like vacuum cleaner jobs and all sorts of things, and I thought, oh, where's the glamour gone? So that was when I thought, well, what I love is the traveling. And that's when I at the time, that's where I'd always wanted to join Virgin Atlantic. And I remember I thought I've got to get in before the cut-off age because it doesn't really exist so much anymore. Things have moved on quite considerably from then, but the cut-off age was 27. And I was about 26 and a half. And I thought, right, it's now or never. And that's when I got into Virgin Atlantic, and it was just an incredible experience. And I've got friends from then that I still have now. And I think it's just I don't know, sorry, I'm probably shooting off on so many different tangents, but I felt like, growing up and having all of these, feeling actually quite different as a person in general and feeling quite alienated. And then when I joined as crew, I was like, here's my people. I feel normal again, And over the years and my learnings, I just realized that it's because we all share not the same values per se, but the same drivers, the things that make us want to get up and go and work, where if we didn't have to earn money, this is the kind of experience that we want to create in life. So I just met a whole other world of people that had the same kind of drivers. So I found a real kind of affinity with those people. So I kind of felt like, I belong somewhere. And then it was about 5 years into Virgin Atlantic, and then I moved into Corporate Aviation. And it was a huge shift because I thought, well, I've been working on an aircraft. It'll just be an easy sort of gravitation into that. But I mean, the only similarity was working in a tube in the air and jet lag. That was it. Everything else was completely different. And I started working for a royal family, and my eyes were completely opened. I couldn't believe the levels of grandeur, the amount of food that we had on board as just in case, and the levels of luxury and experience that we were creating and what could be created. And that sort of then became my sort of norm and default, and that sort of moved me on from working there. And then I was very lucky because that was my starter job. I found that was quite highly revered when I was applying to other companies, and then people would seek me out, and it just kind of moved on from there, really. So yeah. Oh, sorry, and I forgot to mention, during my time as I moved forwards, when I was living in Dubai for a while, that's when I became a TV presenter as well.
Gosh.
That was an incredible thing in itself. It was one of my dream things to ever do. And I remember I did a show reel. And when I was doing the show reel and interviewing people, and the camera guys and the director said, wow, you're really, really good at this. And you're going to go really far. And I was like, great. I remember sending out my show reel and just getting constant no's. And I had 10 rejections. And I thought, right, that's it. I literally, my ego could not take another rejection. I thought, well, I'm clearly crap at this, so let's forget about it. And then as the years have gone on, I've seen other people that have succeeded in all kinds of things. And they've had 130 rejections. And then on the 131st, they got a yes. And that catapulted them into whatever they wanted to do. So, yeah, so it's quite interesting. But I wasn't going to give up. And again, I went on this website where all these sort of opportunities were posted, and I found one up in Birmingham, and they were looking for a pet show presenter. And I thought, yeah, I could do that. And part of that, you had to send in a little piece to camera. So I just spoke to the camera, and then they invited me for an audition. And as part of the audition, you had to learn like a 2-minute piece and then go to the audition and present it to the camera. Now, interestingly, I guess because I've been modeling, I was able to bring in those skills of, although I might have felt nervous inside, especially when we're doing something new, it always kind of brings up a lot of nerves for us. But because I'd been in front of the camera so much, I had this ability to not look or appear nervous, but I could be really nervous inside. So I did the piece to camera and I thought, God, that was terrible. I was so nervous inside. And they said, wow, you just come across so confidently. And I thought, well, I didn't feel like that. And anyway, I was offered the opportunity and I couldn't believe it. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be a presenter. This is amazing. And my partner at the time was like, oh my God, that's amazing. His first question was, what will you get paid? And I said, I don't know. I didn't even ask. And I was just so happy to have the experience. And then I wrote to them and said, oh, by the way, what will the salary be? And they said, oh, no, you've competed against 5 other hopefuls. This is an internship. You're really lucky to have this. And I thought, actually, it doesn't matter that I'm not being paid. This is an incredible opportunity. And, it really was. It was kind of like going to TV presenting school, where I arrived and they said, okay, we want you to select 12 different types of animals that could be pets potentially and make 12 different episodes. I was like, okay, I'll just throw myself in. Let's see what I can do. So I started ringing around all these animal charities, telling them what I was doing. And I said, this show will really raise awareness for the plight of the animals you're taking care of. And they were all on board. It was great. And it was getting to the point where I was running out of animals that could potentially be pets. So I was going down the chicken route, ex-race horses that were going for, pet food and things like that. And that was a really lovely one, actually, with ex-race horses. And then ferrets, pet ferrets. So it was all kinds of stuff. But this was really priming me to really get used to sort of going out there and creating a story, something compelling. But I think what was really helpful was that although I hadn't really had a great deal of training in this stuff back then, I was very aware that a big part of me getting a good interview was being able to help the person I was interviewing to relax. Because this funny thing would happen, and of course I was so used to having a camera in front of me, but people that aren't, a camera comes up and it's like, oh God, and this person just changes into, and I thought, oh God, I'm not going to get a very good interview like this, and that's not going to be great for either of us. So a huge part of that was, actually just look at me, we're just going to have a conversation and I'm just going to ask you a few questions. And And I could see they're like, and then I was always able to get a really good interview. And I think that was half the battle. It wasn't that I was a particularly gifted presenter. It's just that I was able to help them to relax. And from that place, we're able to get something that kind of really worked, you know. So so I was a presenter for a while, loved it. And unfortunately, the financial crash happened and station folded, but I knew that was something that I loved to do as well. So
Brilliant. I mean, that's obviously fed into what you're doing now as a life coach, as a confidence coach. All those skills have built you to that stage of knowing what it feels like to be on the stage, as it were. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? So the way I kind of picture that is that you were probably pretty much very on your own as a catwalk model, or, you know, and all the modeling things that you're doing. It was you, the camera was on you, weren't really inclusive of anybody else. But then you go to Virgin and everybody is heading in the same direction. That whole team are heading in the direction. It's not just you on the pinnacle and everyone else supporting you to do that. But then going back to being in the back of a VIP aeroplane with billionaires and different cultures, and taking those skills in for soothing, that effectively you learned to soothe your interview guests from the TV program to make them feel comfortable. And actually, just the way you were talking there, your voice came down, I noticed, and it was very sort of nurturing, compassionate, empathetic, understanding. And I can see why, you know, you've taken that on to where you are now. So through the billionaire's cabin and giving them a great service, but helping them feel relaxed and comfortable. You also have that very unique, excuse me, that very unique role, as I call it. You have the sandwich role in the VIP jet world, because you've got those very demanding customers in the back. You have to put on a whacking great show the whole time. And then you've got us idiots in the front of the aeroplane who are dinging the bell, asking for teas and coffees and VIP meals and things like that. And you've got to keep us all happy. It's a very unique skill. And I think it's one of those things that does not get mentioned enough. So just interestingly, because you were telling me the story of how you got into the coaching, which I think is really good. So it sounds as though, you know, you built this great confident position, but the reason you got into the coaching was because of a turbulent time during COVID when you thought, oh gosh, I'm not sure I'm worthy of something. Tell us that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think actually just touching back on the modeling aspect, I think every experience that we have in life, we're just kind of trying to get to a place of finding out what we want and what we don't want. And we kind of figure that out through various experiences. And I think the modeling experience for me was quite pivotal in itself, because of course it's very much based on how we look, and that is it. And it's this one-dimensional aspect of us. But yet all of the, everybody's focus and attention is just on that one dimension of us. And I remember feeling incredibly empty and just disconnected, which I wouldn't have even known what that term was at the time. But I felt very alone, very just miserable, actually. And I hadn't realized that, again, I was always conscious of, you know, I have to look at my best the whole time. And if I don't, people will think badly of me. And God forbid that one day I had a modeling job or an audition and I had a spot on my face. It was like all hell broke loose, you know? And yes. I remember just that was my idea of this is who I am, this image. And that is it. And there was nothing more to me, because that's all people focused on. And trying to navigate life from that place, it felt very empty and I felt very alone. And it was very difficult for people to understand even that in itself. And I think moving into something that was all about connection and really sort of bringing the best ourselves to the forefront and really enjoying that. And it was like, wow, a whole other world. And although the financial aspect wasn't there, because we know as commercial cabin crew, we're not paid particularly well, I wasn't there for that. It was the feeling that I got from it and the feeling that I was able to create. And then when I got all of these wonderful occasionally I get these wonderful letters where people would actually take the time to handwrite a letter, because these are back in handwriting days, actually write into an airline to say what a difference I've made to their journey or their honeymoon or whatever it was. And it was just simply by just being myself. And I thought, wow, maybe this is who I am. And it was like a journey of getting to know who I was. And then I thought I was getting a pretty good idea of who I was. And, over the years, I've been in and out of sort of therapy for various things. And I thought, yeah, I'm getting a really good understanding as to who I am. And then COVID hit and I thought, oh my God, I've got no idea who I am. And that was because I remember not having a career anymore, let alone a job, and not knowing what was going to happen to the world, and even if I was going to get a job again. And thinking, where I would talk to people, and the first thing people would say is, hi, what's your name? And what do you do? Never mind even where do you come from, but what do you do? And I was like, I'm Heidi, and I don't do anything anymore because I can't. And I don't know who I am. So I realized that actually I had this false sense of confidence that was actually tied to what I do for a living, not who I am. And that was, I was like, oh my God, I feel even more lost than ever, because I had no kind of rock to cling to have a sense of who I was. I had no idea. And that sent me on this whole other journey that has been the most life-changing journey. And it was on the back of, they always say our biggest breakthrough is on the other side of our biggest breakdown. And that was very much what happened during COVID for me. And again, I feel that for other flight crew out there, no matter what we do in the industry, I think we were hit so much harder than others. And I know many people might disagree with me, but given that my understanding of what draws us to this industry, or that we all have the same drivers, not values, but drivers, again, things that drive us, that freedom, connection, travel and adventure, those drivers that make us who we are, we had access to none of that during COVID. So, some people only lost a few things that would drive them, but we lost everything. And I think that's why it was just super hard for us. It hit me particularly hard. I don't know about everybody else, but for me, it was a shocker time, getting up at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, not wanting to face the rest of the day, what was even left of the day. And I'd say, although I didn't go to a doctor, I was probably had borderline depression. And I felt very lost. And I thought, actually, I need support with this. And it was, it was really just to find myself again. But from that, so much has happened, and it's been just incredible. So anybody that's going through a breakdown of sorts, it's actually I feel like it's just breaking down a structure that wasn't really real in the first place to kind of get us closer to being who we are. And I feel like that happens. It's not to be feared. It's just that it's deconstructing something that probably needed to be deconstructed so that we actually can head in the right direction. So, I think it's just a societal viewpoint sometimes that, it's such a bad thing, but I don't think it is. I think it's one of the greatest gifts, actually.
It's a brilliant message. The word that loads of words I picked up there, but freedom, you mentioned freedom as one of them. And therein lies the problem, is that our value is we often base our value on what other people expect, what other people expect, what we think is going to please somebody else, but we're not actually free because it's really dependent on their validation rather than us being completely open to who we are and what we want and what our value system are. And I think you're right, to have, as you say, my sister uses that, you need to have a breakdown to break through. A lot of people isolate themselves, very lonely. You mentioned that. It's a big killer. We have big problems with depression. We have big problems with suicide in the world, in the country. Very easy just to think I'm on my own here and become completely isolated, and it's terrible. But what I love about it is the fact that you acknowledged you needed some help.
Yes. Yeah.
And so where did you go to?
I found an incredible mentor online. I had the most profound experience as to how I found her in the first place. It's just a ridiculous story, but it's how it happened. But it really, I trusted my intuition in that moment and I went with it. Effectively, a good few years back, when I went up north, generally when I go up north, because it's way cheaper than London, I have all my sort of beauty treatments done and things like that. And I went to see a reflexologist, and not that I was really that interested, but my stepmom was wanting to go, and I thought, I'll go, and it's so cheap. And I was really disappointed because my expectation of the experience it didn't match at all. I was expecting this kind of really kind of quite sort of, something that I'd really feel sort of digging into my feet. And so I'd actually feel something and feel like something was happening. And it wasn't that at all. And I thought, she's just kind of like this. And I thought, well, okay, it wasn't what I was expecting, but, let's just treat it as a relaxation session. So, I'm just sitting there and, I thought, it's just relaxing. And about 15 minutes in, I had this really weird experience where I couldn't tell you what the memory was now, but it was a very, it was like I was in a movie. Just in that moment, it was like I was just completely reliving it, but it was a real just snapshot. It was like that. But it was so powerful, and I couldn't tell you what it was, but it was an old relationship memory. And my life has seemed to be driven by relationships in general. Mm. And I remember just tears streaming down my face, and I thought, and she wasn't looking, she's just looking at my feet. And I thought, well, that was weird. And then 10, 15 minutes later, it happened again, another memory, which again, I couldn't tell you what it was, but it just came up. And I thought, what is happening to me? So, of course, I got out, went on Dr. Google. I Googled. It's a correlation between old trapped emotions and our feet. And this blog came up. And I thought, this woman, she's actually talking to me. This is amazing. She gets what I'm talking about. And I thought, great, I have to see this woman. And I looked and it said, make an appointment here. And I thought, oh God, she's in Brisbane, Australia. That's not going to work. But as it happened, she did online stuff and I booked a chat with her. And I said, look, this is what I'm still generally struggling with in life. And, and then that was just as COVID was hitting as well. So it did sort of two things. I went for help with how to have better relationships in general. I've never had difficulty at work, ever. That's been a really innate thing because I think I don't place so much weight on it. But I think the relationships in my life, because I made it matter so much, there was a lot of stress and heaviness around it. And that's what I really needed help with. So I kind of went with that, but then I came out with something completely different and it's up-leveled that too. So it set me on a journey that I really wasn't expecting. So yeah, and although it was initially in an 8-week journey, I've stuck with her and this has been years later now because I feel like every 2 weeks when I tune in with her, it's like I'm speaking to 10 experts at once. It just fast forwards everything that I'm doing, cuts out the time, cuts out the lack of whatever it is I've got going on. Because, even though we're coaches, we're all human beings. We all have stuff. And it's somebody that can just help me bust through that so quickly. And that in turn helps me to help others do the same. So I always want to be kind of on top of my game and keep going with what I can do to bring the best experience to help others as well. Because she said, when you start really working on one area, it starts to up-level everything else. It's kind of like that cork and it's attached to, and it starts to pull everything else up with it. And that's what I really found. And effectively, at the core of everything is becoming more connected to ourselves. And that's something that I realized that was, missing in me, very much so. And then I see it in other people that I'm coaching or that are struggling in the industry, for example. The core thing is that most of us are, 88% of society are disconnected from themselves. And what draws many people in the industry, especially down the back as cabin crew, most of us are people pleasers. and I'm a recovering one. I'm not 100%, but I'm getting there. and with that, we struggle with a great deal of, confidence issues, all sorts of stuff because of that. It makes us knock out down the back as, being able to take care of people, that whole nurturing aspect. But there's a whole other element that can really hold us back when we're trying to move forwards in general in life. And that's where I thought, oh my God, like people really need help with this, because I know I did. And I can see it in other people. I can see myself in other people going through those experiences that I did. And not only does it affect us not getting jobs or keeping jobs, it affects our relationships and everything. So what I love is that the work that I've learned with her, and it's still ongoing, I keep up leveling with it, bringing that into my coaching is effectively what helps people to really step into that. Plus they start, it helps them with all other areas of their lives as well. We start valuing ourselves, and, it's just been an incredible kind of journey.
Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, it's a lovely message, isn't it? I think for me, it's very easy, and you've done similar thing to me. I'm a people pleaser inherently. We needed to do for our evolutionary purpose, didn't we? We always talk about this, is that we need to be cute to our mum and dad when we were born. Otherwise, the pain of childbirth would be like, well, let's get rid of you. You're too much of an effort. Let's leave you for the lions to eat.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when we walk out into the jungle, hundreds of thousands of years ago, we're with our friends, and mum says, make sure you look after each other. And if you're not acceptable to the group, they'll leave you behind, and then you're going to be eaten by the lion again. So it's intrinsic, isn't it, really? And we need that validation. We need to have some sort of personality that is attractive to the other side. But therein lies the message, is that when you're down the back of an aeroplane, or when I'm sat in the flight deck of an aeroplane with somebody, I'm wanting for them to approve of me. And when it happens, it's great. You think, great connection. And you think, that's great. But of course, you come back the next day and something has happened. You've got a different person there, or that person is feeling under confident or not happy because of something that's going on in their life, and they behave in a totally different way. And then we become completely emotionally hijacked by that contrast. What have I done? And we take it personally. What have I done that's not good enough? And I see that everywhere that I go now. And likewise with you, I've been so frustrated in my mindset in the past of thinking I'm just not good enough. This just verifies that I'm not good enough because somebody hasn't told me I'm wonderful, that whole validation thing. And then my journey over the years, like you, I'm not afraid to go and see somebody professional. I think, why wouldn't anybody spend however much money it is an hour to talk about yourself? I mean, it's bloody obvious, really. But yeah, there's the whole kind of shame thing.
Yeah, I feel like, if somebody's spent years and years studying this stuff inside and out and has invested in themselves to understand that, it's like, why wouldn't you? I don't have 12 years necessarily to understand all of that stuff. I want to go to somebody that just knows it and can get to the crux and can actually help me with it. And then I can start to see really amazing shifts and changes in my life. I just think, how long are we here for? We don't even know. I'd rather live it in the best way I possibly can than just kind of be, sort of fudging my way through it. And, not that that's an issue, but I think it's our levels of happiness and fulfillment. And that's what understanding ourselves better and being able to be way more ourselves and in touch with ourselves actually ripples out from that. Like, that's where we can create a much more fulfilling life in general. It's like, I wouldn't, if I had a heart problem, I'm not going to go to a regular doctor. I'm going to go to somebody that is actually an expert and has studied this. Whether they're studying the heart or the mind, it's like, why wouldn't you? So I always share this because I want to break the stigma of, what is the issue with that? And there's no shame. It's actually a courageous thing to do, and it's something that I think the more we talk about it, the more others will feel, maybe that's something I can do. And there is only good that can come from it. Only good.
Yeah. That's a wonderful thing to hear. And I think, from my point of view, being a male that hasn't been conditioned or socialized to talk about feelings, we're there as an operating system to be tough as you like, to go out and absolutely no mercy. We needed that in the past, of course. the ladies needed to be much more empathetic to nurture the children and things like that. And times are changing now. So I really intend to change things. So if you look at the statistics, which I mention quite often, in the UK alone, 76% of people who take their own lives are men because they isolate themselves big time. Whereas ladies tend to, because they've been brought up to be more empathetic, they have that intrinsically, they tend to reach out a little bit more and talk. And I think this is incredibly important. You know, we cannot survive without each other. Yet when we have these problems psychologically, there's some, I mean, you have a bad toe, like you said, you go to a doctor, you go to a heart surgeon. If you've got something that's you don't quite understand inside, they're not going to just say there, and here's some people go for the pill and some people go for the quick cut. Let's have a new heart and you're fine. But if you continue to eat sugar and you continue to sit and watch Netflix all day, the chances are that heart's going to go as well. So there has to be some sort of accountability there. And I think this is the thing I learned in my coaching training, is to stop the advice monster, which blokes are particularly geared towards, because that's where our value is. I'm going to offer you something here, and if you don't accept it, then it shows I'm not worth anything at all. And then we become emotionally hijacked, and then you have to go into overdrive to try and please more, and then we become even more unhappy, and then we become defensive and then resentful, and it leads into anger and things like that. But at the end of the day, the coaching thing is, and I know this is what's happened to you, is that I've so benefited when somebody makes me accountable for myself. Is like, they're not telling me what to do. I'm finding the answers out for myself, but they're just opening up those channels for me to find. And it's hard work. And blimey, I come off some of the coaching calls I've had, and I've been to psychotherapy as well to try and work out what's blocking me, because I love life so much. And I think I want to have every chance to experience those opportunities of that adventure, that discovery, that freedom. And as soon as I wasn't expecting something, I thought, geez, why didn't I imagine that this could be different? I think you said that, I wasn't expecting that, because we limit our imaginations a little bit. I think this is the power of coaching. And the way you come across is because on CV, which you talk a lot about in your coaching, you can stick all the words in VVIP and super high performance, super high communication, all the rest of it. But that's just words that everybody's putting across. We're not actually putting across our unique self. We're not able to project our unique personalities of confidence inside. So, yeah, I mean, having learnt it yourself, how do you go about talking to your clients to start that process of what is unique about you? How are you going to bring across something unique about you to bring confidence in other people about you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is such a key thing, because I think when we've done any degree of self-development work, or whatever that may look like, you start to get a sense of what your strengths may be. And many people that I work with have some degree, but we've been very much conditioned as a society to not champion ourselves, because all of the stories we were told, don't get ahead of yourself, and who do you think you are, and all of that stuff. So I find it when I'll do like an exercise and say, hey, so tell me some things about yourself that you're really proud of, and people will sit there and go, ooh. I'll say, okay, tell me a few things that you're not happy with about yourself, that you blah, 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 blah. There's a whole array of, and it's very easy for us to tap into what we're not happy with. And again, it's not that it's just that we've practiced that over and over, so that becomes our default. And when that is our default, where we then see life through that lens, we speak to life through that lens, it's like we're going to end up on that side of the street rather than the sunny side, And I think it's just a lot of times I'm just sort of helping to influence and change different habits, and then giving them my examples, because I feel that what has been great, reflecting back now on all of the kind of shitstorms that I've been through, I think, wow, like what a blessing, because actually me having experienced it, it doesn't really matter what people come to me with. I'm like, oh yeah, I think I've probably experienced some degree of that or something. And actually this is how I got through it. And then sometimes just them having that awareness, and something you just said about as well, I think there is a great deal of healing in the listening. You know, I think that part of coaching as well is really being able to really fully listen and, you know, take everything in, not just with our ears, but what is kind of coming up. We have to get quite quiet for that. But that in itself that's where we're really tuning into our presence. And that in itself is incredibly healing, even if we weren't to say anything. And that in itself can be so incredible, you know. So again, but honestly, I believe that the more we tune into our real selves and then somehow get that on paper, and then we're tuning into what our strengths are when we haven't got those filters of all the bad stuff about ourselves. Tuning into ourselves is where our most confident selves are. We never lost confidence. It's just that we piled it up with a load of crap that we have to sort of pull off the layers, and then, it's there. We can tune into it temporarily, and the more we practice it, the more it becomes our default. But that's often what I'm doing in my coaching sessions and group coaching in my programs and things like that. It's really talking about that stuff and normalizing that it's okay to feel like this and to think of things in that way. And I just want to show you a different way. When I did it differently and thought differently, this is what happened. Even during COVID, actually, one of the biggest breakthroughs I had was when I was learning that desperation was not going to be my friend. And desperation comes from a place of, I don't trust it will happen. Therefore, I just need to cling to it. If we know it's going to happen, or we don't have to worry about it because we know it's coming and whatever, we're not desperate. So desperation definitely comes from a lack of confidence and trusting life in general. When I'd managed to lose the desperation about getting back into flying, because the more desperate I came, I couldn't get even the worst of jobs that I would never have applied for in a lifetime, but I was applying for them because I thought, shit, I have to grab anything that comes up. And yet I couldn't even get the worst of jobs. And my confidence fell even lower, and I thought, oh my God. So I kind of had this reset of, clearly aviation isn't going to work for me anymore. Maybe it's never going to properly come back. So I just completely shifted and thought, I'm going to get a proper job where I can still feel some degree of freedom and all of that stuff. And then I lost the desperation around flying because I thought, okay, I'm moving on to something else. I was focused on that. And then within 2 weeks of that, all of these, fantastic job offers started coming in. I thought, it must be because the industry's changing and everybody's starting to work again. So I quickly checked back into the groups online, that are support groups, but actually during COVID, they just became groups of mass hysteria. Everybody's drama and worries and were just, magnified tenfold. And every time I checked into those groups, I actually felt sick. And I thought, I can't even be part of these groups. And I just checked in to see if everybody else was working, but no, it was still this like whirlpool of mass hysteria. And I thought, oh my God, the only thing I've done differently is lose the desperation. And these groups are groups of desperation right now. And I thought, oh my God, this energy thing is like, it's huge. It can't be seen, but it can be really felt. And it comes through that transmission comes through with everything, with our thoughts, how we might write something. Because when I'm checking through and I'm like, no, there's a bit of desperation in there, or there's that lack of confidence. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, reword it like this or change that. And they're like, oh, okay. And then eventually they start to, think in that way and can see that for themselves. But yeah, that desperation it's such a repellent. And I've certainly had it in, when back in the day when I was desperate to find a partner, online dating, approaching that with any desperation. Oh my God, it's a disaster. And that's the thing, when you try to control situations, when you have this desperation around it, you can sometimes manage to get something, but it will never be right because it's come from that place of desperation. It just never works. So we've got to get to that place of confidence to align with the kind of whatever it is that we want to create. It's aligned with us being at our sort of best selves, really. And we've got to find a way to start aligning with that. So a lot of the work I do is really just helping with that, and then adding in some of the personalization as we go. So yeah, such a big subject, isn't it?
It's such a big subject. We could be here all day, and this is why. Once you unearth this, once you realize what we didn't know, certainly every time I read a new book, I think it's extraordinary. I know less than I ever thought before, but that can be overwhelming, or it can be incredibly exciting. I think what I really liked you were saying there, and it goes back to my understanding of the nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight and fly system, and it's going to always be geared towards the negativity, because we needed to know when we were about to be eaten by a lion hundreds of thousands of years ago, when the weather was going to turn nasty on us. So we had to be ready, like a bird does now on a lawn.
Yes.
If you look at a bird and it's lovely in the morning, they're tweeting and having a great time, and isn't that beautiful robin sitting on the ground there? But that robin is absolutely, excuse my language, shitting itself, because it's come out of the nest. The babies are up there. The babies might be eaten by the eagle. They might be eaten by the eagle. They've got to keep vigilant, eat as many worms as possible, so they don't overload themselves. They don't put too much fuel on that they can't take off again. So it's all basically to do with the fight and fly thing. We've got to survive somehow here. Whereas, so we're inevitably geared towards that, aren't we? And we pile the negativities on there, but then we need to add to that smart brain, the mindset, the positive creative mindset, the neocortex that comes into play. But what I really liked was, I encourage my clients to do this, is that, and I coach cricket as well. Listen, guys, give me a debrief. Oh, well, I didn't bat very well. Oh, well, I was a bit, I wasn't feeling very well this morning. No. I want you to 5 minutes, give me everything that's positive about it. Because your idea, the fact that confidence is always underneath there, is a really strong message. It's not you're lacking confidence. It's not that you don't have confidence or you're underconfident. It's that the confidence is there. So we're just going to peel the layers off. And this is the exciting process. So you make it an exciting process. Imagine when that comes off, what's it going to be like down route, down the line there. I think it's incredibly powerful. So that was the first part of this fantastic conversation with lovely Heidi Cole. She's so open and honest, and I really wanted to continue on the conversation. So I'll split it in two parts again. And of course, if you've got some comments on what we discussed today, I'd always love to hear your thoughts. So please leave them in the comments box below. And until we return for the second part two of the conversation, I wish you all the very best. And please remember to keep it in the greens.